In many of our rivers, brown trout and salmon populations have been in decline, impaired by a range of land management practices implemented over the last 50 years. Changing land practices, land drainage and flood alleviation schemes have frequently resulted in negative impacts upon salmonid populations. The various life history stages of brown trout and Atlantic salmon have specific requirements and are affected differently by a large range of physical influences upon our watercourses. Many of our watercourses still have viable spawning zones, capable of producing large numbers of fry, but the limiting factors arise thereafter, mainly poor water quality and impacted nursery areas, which limit the survival of salmonids to par and smolt stage. Ideally, in terms of stream and habitat restoration, techniques should be adopted on a catchment-wide approach. However, due to competing use of resources, those involved in water body management are in many instances unable to take a holistic approach. Therefore, if the watercourse can be broken down into meaningful segments, and these are addressed individually, positive impacts can still be created. The presence, and more importantly, the abundance of trout and salmon within a watercourse is a key indicator to its health and that of the wider catchment. In order to help a watercourse produce a greater number of salmonids, it is important to understand what these species need to survive and how the fish are influenced by their immediate environment. Before commencement of any rehabilitation project is undertaken, it is vitally important to assess the overall land use activities and how these impact the river catchment and the freshwater ecosystem within which trout and salmon live and reproduce. In advance of carrying out any type of fishery enhancement works, a baseline survey needs to be undertaken. A walk-over habitat survey will highlight a range of activities that are causing habitat degradation problems. Basic surveys tend to incorporate the use of electrofishing. The numbers and age range of species detected give a good indication of the state of the population along that particular stretch of river. These surveys will help to ascertain species, densities, and size ranges of fish present, and the degree and extent of habitat degradation. Walk-over habitat surveys assessing the in-stream habitat, the bankside riparian zone, and the state and type of the riverbed substrate provide important information. This ensures that any enhancement proposals are specific to the improvement of that area and ultimately will make a worthwhile contribution to increasing fish stocks. It is also important that restoration works are cost-effective. An example of a river which required in-stream enhancement work is the Ballygolly River, a tributary of the River Blackwater in County Tyrone. The lower stretches of this river were deepened and parts channelized as part of an arterial drainage scheme in the late 1980s. This impacted the resident brown trout population, but migratory Atlantic salmon and Lough Neagh Dollahan trout, which also use it as a spawning and nursery habitat, were most affected. The initial surveys identified specific areas to address. One such stretch comprised of a heavily over-widened and deepened channel, a legacy from the drainage scheme. It was lacking any significant in-stream diverse structure, which provides spawning gravel and nursery habitat. Also absent was a riparian zone, which lacked different levels of native vegetation, leading to further habitat degradation. Management of the riparian zone will significantly influence salmonid carrying capacity, and by simply erecting a livestock fence, which in time creates an effective buffer strip, will increase plant biodiversity, stabilise the riverbanks and help to reduce sediment input. Instream works were started with the aim of attempting to create a mixed boulder, cobble, gravel area, which is a very productive salmonid habitat. In-stream stone restoration methods can take many forms. Materials can simply be randomly placed into the river. However, it is essential to be aware not to cause erosion of the riverbanks downstream of the enhanced site, or impact upon adjoining land drainage. Prior to embarking on any works, approvals need to be sought from respective landowners, fishery owners, and relevant statutory authorities. To successfully develop any enhancement works, significant quantities of stone materials will need to be delivered and stockpiled on site, and the cooperation of landowners will be vital. Works will take place over the summer months immediately after grasslands have been cropped or grazed, and the lands are dry and watercourses are at their lowest levels. This ensures least impact to grounds and ensures best use and placement of any stone materials. In-stream stone materials used should be locally sourced, naturally rounded and preferably clean. Specialised machinery is required to move and distribute these materials, and ideally, equipment used should have minimal impact upon the ground adjacent to the river. Site location is of paramount importance, and areas for consideration need to have sufficient gradient and flow dynamics across it to ensure a successful outcome. In other heavily modified channels in which flooding may be a concern, the creation of a two-stage channel is a good option. In order to achieve this, D-shaped boulder structures were created to speed up water flow and clean the substrate gravels from sediment buildup. Precise placement of rock was essential, and a specialised long arm excavator was commissioned to get maximum reach. The two-stage channel is basically a smaller channel within the main river channel. At times when water flows are low, the main channel is confined to the subsection of the channel, thus resulting in fish optimising the channel with best in-stream features. This approach ensures that under normal to low flow conditions, flow is optimised, yet at times of high flow, these features are flooded out, and thus ensuring minimal impact to the overall high volume carrying capacity of the watercourse. Enhanced locations will need annual checks and assessments to be conducted to ascertain that the fish populations are initially increasing and then stabilising. It is important to ensure that livestock fences are still in good order to protect riparian zones and keep livestock from trampling the riverbanks and inputs of additional nutrient, causing pollution. This will also help to reduce erosion and sediment input, and protect the spawning and nursery habitat which has been created.